The way that I think about an elevator pitch is that it is the beginning of a conversation when you want to talk about your career. It starts with being able to share about who you are in the way that you want to be seen and understood. Your elevator pitch is your opportunity to say, here's who I am, here's what I'm great at, and here's how we're going to work together. When I've worked with younger individuals, there is so often what you just described, which is, I don't matter in this room because there are more important people in this room. That's a mindset. That's thinking, I don't deserve to be in this room, or I don't matter, right? But if you're in that room, you actually do. And the only way people will know how to work with you, what projects to give you, what you are interested in, is if you're able to express it. So many people often say, Eloise, I've struggled with making eye contact in these moments. It's so awkward. But I'm like, you're looking at me right now. We're just talking to each other. It's not necessarily about learning those skills or making it better, or speaking like a leader. Oftentimes it's just leaning on what we are already good at, like having a conversation that can really unlock real connection between people. We often mimic how other people introduce themselves. It's not because the person next to you shied away from introducing themselves fully and with generosity that you should freak out in the moment and become smaller. Set the example, put yourself out there, engage with people. And if you are making eye contact, and if you are being generous in how you say it, and if you do really connect to what you're saying, you will stand out.
Welcome to Speak Arizona, the podcast for professionals ready to elevate their communication and leadership skills. Whether you're speaking to a crowd or leading a team, you'll get practical tips, expert insights, and inspiring stories. Join us as we dive into the craft of powerful communication and authentic leadership. Speak Arizona is powered by District 3 Toastmasters. Subscribe and take the next step to becoming the speaker and leader you want to be. Welcome to Speak Arizona, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to find your voice. Hi, I'm your host, Rupesh Parbhoo. I help technical experts upgrade from being the smartest person in the room to the most influential, one conversation at a time. We often hear that first impressions matter, but what really matters is whether people can quickly understand who you are, what you do, and why it matters. When someone says, "Tell me about yourself," a lot of people freeze, ramble, or sound like they're reading their resume out loud. That's why I'm excited for today's conversation. We have a very special co-host, Tatum O'Kennedy, who's joined us previously on the podcast, as well as Eloïse Eonnet. Eloise helps leaders communicate with more clarity, confidence, and purpose. In this episode, we'll explore what makes an elevator pitch effective, why it matters far beyond a job interview, and how to craft one that feels natural, polished, and true to you. Eloise, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rupesh. So glad to be here with you.
And Tatum, thank you for inspiring me to have this conversation. Also, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back.
Eloise, do you mind doing a quick introduction of yourself or your elevator pitch?
Gladly. My name is Eloïse Eonnet, as Rupesh said. Thank you again for having me. Over the past, almost 20 years, I have been building an expertise in leadership, communication, and building executive presence. So what that means is that I mostly work one-on-one with leaders to help them build the skill sets and the approaches and the mindset shifts that they need to really rely on every single day to lead with confidence and clarity and ultimately influence. And so what's really cool about what I do and what I love in the work that I do is that I get to watch my clients really build that confidence and actually take it into their work every day and build towards the things they want to build towards with much more effectiveness and clarity, because they feel more confident and clear, not only with who they are and what their ideas are, but then also being able to communicate it and build relationships with the people around them. And something that I truly believe in is that leadership starts at the top and trickles down. And what I love also about what I get to do is I get to see the impact of the work that I do with the leaders that I support on their teams. And that's when I get the most satisfaction, is when I can see that leadership is actually translating into teams working better together, more in alignment, with more ease and confidence for them as well. And as you said, leadership, a huge piece of it is being able to express who you are with confidence and clarity and ease. And the elevator pitch is a huge part of that. So I'm really looking forward to diving in to that topic and breaking it down. And Tatum, working with you, perhaps on yours in a few minutes.
Yes, thank you, Eloise. And thanks for that great demonstration of an elevator pitch. And we're going to pick it apart as we go through today. And I love what you said about leadership not only being about confidence and clarity, but being about influence and impact. I think sometimes we forget that there's more to the story. You're trying to create change here. But let's get into it. Eloise, what is an elevator pitch? Why is it important? Why is it an important skill for people to learn?
As you said before, people freeze when we say elevator pitch, right? It feels like this thing you have to have, and it feels like it needs to be perfect. And it's a very important piece of your leadership. I always like to say that there are many versions of the truth, right? We are complex beings with long histories within our work and our lives. And I think that one of the biggest hurdles for people is like, what is it for me? What is an elevator pitch for me? And ultimately, the way that I think about an elevator pitch is that it is the beginning of a conversation with the person or people in front of you when you want to talk about your career. You have so much agency in the kinds of conversations that you want to have. And it starts with being able to share about who you are in the way that you want to be seen and understood. And at a high level, that's what an elevator pitch is. Now, there could be many versions, many different ways that you could talk about yourself, and we can talk about what that looks like today. But at the highest level, all it is a conversation starter.
I love that. Tatum, have you ever struggled to talk about yourself?
I have. And I was going to ask you this, Eloise. I'm curious because when it comes to a point when it's time for me to give an elevator pitch, I kind of blank, like you said. And then I kind of go through my resume in my head like, oh, I need to tell them everything I've done and all my career aspirations and everything. And I think it just kind of becomes like word vomit. How do you deal with that? How do you overcome that?
Yeah, so I think at the first thing that comes to mind is there have to be decisions about what you want people to know about you, right? You could say your whole resume and all the things you've ever done, all the things you want to do, and it's great that you actually have that in your mind. That's actually, you need to first kind of have that in your brain, right? But then there's a decision that needs to be made. And I think that we freeze a lot of the time because we haven't actually taken the time to make a decision for ourselves about what we want that narrative to be. So that's the first piece. And that takes time. That takes a little bit of pause and slowing down in our day and thinking through, okay, of all the things that I've done and all the things I want to do, what is relevant here? And what is the narrative, this narrative today that I want to tell? And on the flip side of that, it's also who is your audience and where are you in your career and what do you want to do next, right? So if you're in a job transition, then your elevator pitch is going to be a little bit different because you're going to be wanting to talk much more about the future than the past, even though we're going to get to that. It's so much more exciting to talk about the future than the past. We'll get there, right? But you're going to lean on the future more because you're telling somebody, hey, here's what I want to do next. And by the way, do you know anyone who can help me do that, right? If you're networking, let's say. So what are your goals in introducing yourself? And then also, who is your audience? It's different if you're talking to a colleague, someone in your network that you don't know, your plumber, who's coming over and is like, by the way, what do you do? Who knows? He might know somebody, right? If you're looking for a job. So it really depends on your audience and also what your goals are. And all of that is really hard to do in the moment, right? So it's like those moments where you've kind of freaked out and you're like going through all your stuff. You're doing way too much in the moment. How can we do that ahead of time? And it shouldn't take a million years to do, but it does take a little bit of time and effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. I like the idea of framing it, one, as a conversation, so it kind of puts you at ease, and then two, giving you just a decision. You need to make a decision on what it is you want to communicate, which, yeah, at the end of the day is exactly the purpose of the elevator pitch. So, yeah, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I was talking to another leadership coach earlier about myself, and I remember telling her that I wanted to put together, I'm a yoga instructor, I'm a podcast host, I'm a small business owner, I have this corporate experience, I have this startup experience, and I was trying to put it all together and make it all cohesive. And it was really stressing me out because it ended up coming out like just a laundry list. And then she was like, and why? Who's your audience? Are you talking to? And Toastmasters and public speaking, like, what impact are you trying to create? And then I was like, oh, yeah, I don't have to say everything. And it can be very curated to whatever conversation that I'm having with the audience.
Totally. And I think that a way to take the pressure off is that it's just a conversation starter. You shouldn't say it all. Then there's nothing else to talk about, right? So it's like it's a little bit like, okay, what is the high level? What are the key things? What are the themes? What are the things I really want to start a conversation about? And then as that conversation happens and continues, you can pepper in, oh, that other experience and that other thing that inspires you, right? So it's almost like a little starter to the meal. The main course can come later, and that's actually the purpose of the elevator pitch. That's why it's called that, right? It should be short and to the point, and then lead into when you walk out of the elevator with the person, they should want to keep talking to you.
Yes. And what are we've been teasing it a little bit already. Can you go through, Eloise, what are some of your elements, or what's the framework that you recommend to build a strong elevator pitch?
Yeah. So I think there are variations on your elevator pitch. That's an important thing to state, right? If you literally are in an elevator and there's 2 floors to go down and you really don't have more than 15 seconds, you're going to say the shorter version. And then there's, if you're in the interview and, I'm like, oh, Rupesh, tell me about yourself in the interview, right? Then you need to be a little bit more generous because you have a little bit more time. So there's variations here. But one framework that I really like is the following. There are a few elements. And what we're doing here is that we are making decisions about what we're saying, and we're telling a story. There's a flow to what we're saying. It's not a laundry list. It's not a full history. It's little snippets of information. The first I call the headline. The headline is one sentence. It really shouldn't be more than that. That is kind of the larger picture of who you are in your career. And something that's very important here, especially if you are looking to grow and advance and make progress or shift careers, is to not get stuck with your job description, your title, and where you are right now. It's a much larger picture. And so what I encourage you to do when you're thinking about this, and this is actually a really fun exercise, is to step back for yourself and say, okay, I'm not a coach who owns my business. That doesn't define me in my career. Something much larger does. So where are you coming from? What have you built towards today? And also, where do you want to go next? And that should be included in that first sentence. It's a much higher level piece. So phrases to use that are helpful here, because I know this kind of sounds very broad what I'm saying, right? Is I focused my career on, or over the past X number of years, I've built an expertise in X, right? And really thinking again, like, what is it that you do? Do you build relationships between people? Do you build teams? Do you create innovative products, right? It's not necessarily what you're doing in your current job. It's much larger idea here, right? So Tatum, Rupesh, you were talking about, you wear all these hats, right? Is there a connecting piece to all of that? Is it relationships? Is it connecting people, right? All these things that you do in all these different parts of your life actually could fall into one larger area of expertise or thing that you love to do. So that's the first piece. And I encourage everyone to play around with what that could look like, and it will evolve over your career. Absolutely. The second piece is a little bit more concrete. So for some of us, that might be, and here's what that looks like, right? If I tell you, oh, I'm a career coach or I'm a leadership coach, some people might not know what that is. So I say, oh, and what that looks like is I work with these people and it looks like that. And here's the outcome of the work that we do. For somebody in a job or going into a job interview, that might be a little bit of street cred, right? It's not your laundry list of jobs. That becomes boring. It's too long. Again, curate, make a decision. And you choose one or two pieces that have led you to where you are today. It could be projects, not necessarily jobs, or it could be jobs. You can organize it. I would say 3 is a really good number here of what you've done. The third piece is why you do what you do. And this can be hard for us. This sometimes requires us to pause and really think. But it's a really great conversation starter. And it quickly tells somebody about who you are and why you do what you do. And that's important. a great phrase that I love is, if let's say you're in the interview, you might say, you said, here's my headline. Then you said, here are a couple things that led me to where I am. That's your street cred. And then you say, and when I take a step back and think about the impact I want to have moving forward, and now you start talking about the things you want to do. What do you want to do next? And that gets people excited, right? For someone like me, it's, and the impact of my work is this, and this is what I think is really exciting about that, right? And then you hand back the mic. Again, this is the beginning of a conversation. If we kind of stop and put the pressure on the person in front of us to kind of pick up the conversation, it doesn't feel conversational. So you do that by being like, oh, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today and learning more about you. Or I'm really excited to dive into this conversation that we have prepared. Or I'm excited to learn about this job that I'm interviewing for and how I might be able to fit into this team. So those are the elements that are one way to introduce yourself and one way to give your pitch. Now, we can, of course, have a conversation about which pieces you use and don't use in various situations.
Thank you. That is super helpful. And I liked how you peppered in some examples for people to use. What are some mistakes that people make when they're trying to craft their elevator pitches, even if they have a framework such as yours?
Yeah, I think I see one main problem that I see is that you say too much or too little, right? There are us ramblers out there who just don't know how to make decisions for ourselves or haven't taken the time to make decisions for ourselves about what we want to say, right? So we'll go into examples or we'll be too long-winded. And then it becomes, I'm talking at my audience rather than being in conversation with my audience. And you kind of lose your audience. Sometimes we overcorrect and we don't say enough. And then it feels like you don't really want to talk to the person in front of you. And they're going to have trouble continuing that conversation or having enough to respond to. So that's one big thing that I see that I really work on with people that I work with is, okay, what is the right level of detail? So that's one piece. And I think the other piece is just not practicing it ahead of time and feeling awkward about what you're saying for second and third. It just takes a couple rounds of trying. And the more you say it out loud, the more you'll feel what feels right to you and conversational to you. Hold on to those things, to that flow. So yes, it's practice is number one, to both feel what feels comfortable so that you're confident and also kind of feeling out the length of what you're saying. Is it enough to actually start a conversation? Is it so much that you're breaking that conversational feel?
I have a question on that. What techniques do you use or advise people when they are giving those elevator pitches or having conversations to be self-aware enough to say, hey, you're talking a little too much, or hey, I want more? Because a lot of this is so internal, as Tatum mentions, like you're internally trying to make all these decisions instead of being aware of your audience. So what are some of the things you advise? As you were talking about rambling or being too short, I was like, often we've all been in those conversations where the other person is just going on and on and on, or
I know, it's so
or
awkward.
they're like, you're trying to pull something out of them, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to flip it. How do we help people become more self-aware?
Yeah. It depends on the person, but I think that a big piece is actually helping ourselves get out of our head. It's not about us, our elevator pitch. It's actually about the person in front of you. And we worry so much about what we're saying and what's important and what do I want to say. And I think that when we take the time and when I work with people to actually really talk to the person in front of them, we all know how to have conversations, right? When you take the pressure off, when we're hanging out with our friends, when we're at dinner with a friend, or when we're waking up in the morning and talking to whoever we live with in the morning, we have natural conversations. Most of us, right? Know how to have those conversations. How do we tap back into that? It's by really connecting with the person in front of us, by really caring about who they are and what they think and how they're going to respond. And we naturally can fall back into a conversation in that if we're doing that, right? So it's actually getting out of our heads. Tatum, does that resonate given what you were saying before?
It does. It really does. I've never really thought of an elevator pitch as a conversation before, which is so silly, but it really, like I said, it takes a lot of the pressure off and really makes it like
Yeah.
a two-way street where it's like, I'm giving you this information about me. I want information about you in turn so we can have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. It does take the pressure off. It's really, what I always say is be generous, right? So when someone, if we could look at the two cases, right? Someone is not sharing enough. What I'll be like is, okay, well, you're giving me this one sentence, let's say, about you, and I don't have enough to like dig in and be like, oh, cool, like tell me more about that, or what does that look like, right? Without just a little bit more color or showing me versus telling me, uh, I don't know. You're putting all the work on the person in front of you to build the conversation, and that's not being generous, right? So how can we be a little bit more generous with the person in front of us? On the flip side, if someone's speaking too long, it's how do you actually pause in what you're saying and actually ask a question? So flip it to the other person, like asking questions like, does that make sense? Or do you know what I mean? And helping that person who feels much more comfortable rambling and sharing, oversharing, uh, working in moments where they can actually literally engage with the person in front of them and give them a chance to respond. And that helps turn it into a conversation.
Yeah, I like the reframing of it as being generous when you share a little bit more. I think something I really struggled with, especially at the very start of my career, was keeping it much too short because I was always thinking, oh, they don't want me to waste their
They don't
time
care.
talking about me. Yeah. And so I think it really hindered a lot of productive conversations from happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Rupesh.
Tatum, you're getting into a question I wanted to ask. And Tatum brought up being younger or earlier in career and maybe not feeling like you have a lot to share. I'm curious, Eloise, as you've worked with clients on this, what dynamics come up that you've seen that are interesting to talk about?
Yeah, I think, Tatum, the age thing is huge, right? When I've worked with younger individuals, there is so often what you just described, which is, oh, well, they don't care. I don't matter in this room because there are more important people in this room, right? Who have more experience, who are older, et cetera. Uh, it's really tough to break through that because that's a mindset that's thinking that's not going on there. I don't deserve to be in this room or I don't matter, right? But if you're in that room, you actually do. And the only way people will know how to work with you, what projects to give you, how, what you are interested in is if you're able to express it, right? So for those of us who feel like we don't have a voice in that room, it's actually, I would say, spend even more time on what you want to say and what's important, and get really confident and comfortable with that narrative. Uh, and the more you practice it, the more it feels comfortable to say, right? So there's definitely that the younger versus older piece. And on the flip side, those who have more experience, there's more choice, right? Rupesh, as you were saying, like you wear many hats, like all these things that we do. How do you choose which narrative? And what I say to them, what I say to those who have more experience is, focus not on where you came from, but focus on your future. What is it that you want to do next? You're lucky, you have experience, you know what you like. Can we focus on telling the stories and engaging in conversations about the things you want to do next?
I want to emphasize practice, 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 practice. Even I was kind of laughing at myself earlier. I have a team now that helps me with the podcast. And when we're recording in studio, on computer, it's a little bit more difficult, but in studio, they're like, look at the camera. You've said this opening a million times, and I have. And it's so funny. I still read the notes, and they're like, you don't have this memorized by now?
Yeah.
And so that practice and that like integration, I almost call it, like it's practice, 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 and then integrating it with your whole body so you know what to say is so important.
Absolutely. And something that I think is really, really important is two things. Practice the experience, not just the content. That's a huge thing that I say over and over and over and over. If you're going to be walking into a room of 500 people, you must practice walking into the room with 500 people, right? Even if it's through your living room and into the bathroom and back out, right? Whatever it is in your home that you practice, the experience is key. The other piece is, so many of us write what we want to speak. And I know it feels safe and it feels real and concrete and it's right there and I can read it. But so many of us fall into that trap, and it is a trap for two reasons. Number one, the way that I speak is not the way that I write. When I speak, there are no periods to what at the end of my sentences. It's actually a bunch of those dashes that ChatGPT uses constantly.
The
AI does
M
it so
dash.
well. Yes, that's how we speak, which is why AI speaks to us that way. It's because it's responding to the way that we speak, right? So when we write out sentences and then we speak those sentences, it feels awkward and sounds awkward. And when it feels awkward and sounds awkward, it kills conversation, right? So what I would encourage when we are practicing, it's practice the right way. Do yourself a favor, save time and energy, and like leave the frustration behind, right? It's more deciding, what do you want to say? What is the key takeaway of my bullet point? And writing the key takeaway down, or the sentence starter, perhaps, if that's easier. For example, I've built my career on, or I focused my career on, or built an expertise in, right? If that's the first sentence, maybe you write just that. And then know what you want to say. And practicing the idea allows us to speak much more fluidly and in conversation. And that is much more likely to start the actual conversation with the person in front of you. And it also saves you time preparing.
I liken it to whenever I coach other public speakers and they're speaking on stages, usually there's a sound check, and I always tell them, like, go early, make friends with the AV guy, just go stand on stage, feel
Totally.
the clicker. There's so many people, there's just these little things that seem silly in the moment. Why would I go mess with the clicker? It's like, feel the click of the click, but that's practicing that experience.
100%.
And I love that.
Yeah. It's so important. We one of the biggest roadblocks, I should say, roadblocks, is that people focus so much on the content of what they're going to say. When in fact, I would say more than 50%, way more than 50% of how you are heard and perceived is through everything else. It's through your body language, it's through your tone, it's through your pacing, it's through whether you're engaging people physically. And so all of that is just so important. And that's part of the practice. Not just, oh yeah, I know my bullet points in my head. No, just actually literally saying it out loud standing is a huge piece of that, for sure, with the clicker in your hand.
Yeah, I love that reframe. It's not just the words, it's how you say it, how you feel in your body, what you're wearing, like all these things that make, it's kind of funny. I don't like to talk a lot about appearances of others, but what you wear changes how you feel sometimes, not always. But, if you're in a nice suit and you're looking good, that's going to give you confidence and you're going to project that out. Or if you're in your pajamas, you're going to feel a different way.
Yeah.
And I love that the nonverbal side of this elevator pitch or communication or speaking in general.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. It influences how you feel and how you're perceived by other people. Definitely.
I feel like it's almost akin to the more aspirational parts of the elevator pitch, like when you're talking about all of these dreams and these goals that you have and like framing them in terms of what you're doing right now. It makes it more exciting too than just talking about like, here's what I've done and what I'm doing right now. So to me, it's kind of the same like confidence booster to be able to talk about your dreams a little bit.
For sure. Yeah. And I'm so surprised by people because I ask them, so what do you want to do next? Like, what part of your career is most exciting to you? And people don't necessarily take the time to really put that into words. Mm-hmm. And it can be the most exciting conversation starter and the most invigorating part for the speaker, right? To talk about what comes next, to talk about what's exciting, and to talk about the impact that they can have. It feels safer to talk about what's known and what is concrete. It's much more exciting and inspiring to talk about what comes next, both for the speaker and the listeners, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I like how in this conversation, the way we've talked about elevator pitches so broadly, and I was concerned, and the reason I structured it this way is people thinking about an elevator pitch is only something you do at the beginning of a job interview where someone says, tell me about yourself. So we've talked about networking and job interviews and different moments. What are some other areas to be prepared for or to think about the importance of getting your elevator pitch together, even though you're not going for a job interview?
The structure that I shared can be used in a job interview. It can be used in a networking event. It can be used when you are talking to people across the company and are like, wait, who are you and how do you fit in at this large company? I don't know you, right? And you can share that whole version. Then there are also moments where you might want to share a little bit shorter version. Maybe it's just that first sentence or the first two sections, or maybe you jump from the first section to the last section. You get to play around with this content. Once it's yours, you can then play around with it. But you can use it in so many different circumstances. If you work for a large organization and you meet a new team, or you're working with new clients, you need an elevator pitch. You need people to say who you are. I always say it's the beginning of the relationship that you're going to build with that person. So if you don't share anything, or if you don't share enough, then you will remain a little bit invisible to them because you haven't shared, you haven't shown up, they haven't seen you. Your elevator pitch in those circumstances is your opportunity to say, here's who I am, here's what I'm great at, and here's how we're going to work together, right? So you can use it internally at your organization. You can use it if you're a freelancer. You can use it with any new client conversation. If you are, a service provider, a yoga instructor, right? Perhaps it's when you are looking for your next gig or meeting new people who you want to bring into your circles, right? So variations on the theme can be used. And when you get really good at it, and it comes with practice, literally doing it in front of other people as well as figuring it out on your own, the more flexible you can become in sharing which pieces with which audience. But honestly, you can use it in so many different parts of your career, and really thinking about it as an opportunity to build relationship. And the more you build relationship, the more network you have. And the more network you have, the more opportunities come your way, whether it's internal at your organization or just largely in your community and network.
I really like that framing too, because I feel like I hear a lot of okay or decent enough elevator pitches where I'm like, okay, I know what you do. But I feel like the difference here is it's not just a good elevator pitch, but it's one that's actually creating the potential for opportunities for you, which is really amazing.
I think what's helpful here is like, what is that opportunity that you want right now, right? If you're in the room and senior leadership is in the room with you, and it's a round table, everyone's going around and introducing themselves because it's a new project. Please introduce yourself correctly, right? And correctly meaning give them enough to remember who you are, right? And how do I remember who you are? Because you speak clearly and effectively. It's not too long, it's not too short, right? But it feels conversational, and you're also talking about, how you're going to contribute and the impact that you want to have, right? You can adapt it. And one thing that I'll say about that too, which I think is really important, is we often mimic how other people introduce themselves. And
yes.
I plead with you. It's not because the person next to you shied away from introducing themselves fully and with generosity that you should freak out in the moment and become smaller as a result of what they just said. Set the example, put yourself out there, engage with people. And if you are making eye contact, and if you are being generous in how you say it, and if you do really connect to what you're saying, you will stand out in the right ways, and you will build relationships, right? We often freak out in the moment because the other people at the networking event weren't generous. For example, be generous.
That's so true. Don't be afraid to stand out and be prepared.
Yeah.
And speaking of standing out and being prepared, Tatum, would you be opening to sharing your elevator pitch? And Eloise, would you be opening to do a little bit of a live workshop coaching session with Tatum?
Happy to. If Tatum, you're up for it?
I'm up for it.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into it.
Okay. I did write mine down because I don't have it practiced yet. And I already do have some notes for myself based on what we've talked about, but curious to hear your thoughts too. Okay. I work with pharma companies to unlock the business value of their manufacturing data so that they can get therapies to patients faster. I started my career as an engineer, so I've been in the weeds before dealing with deviations and disconnected data when time is really of the essence. Now I sit at the intersection of technology and business impact, so I'm really focused on helping pharma companies make decisions faster and reduce their risk. I'm really passionate about helping teams, both within my current organization and the pharma companies that I work with, work more proactively and build solutions at scale.
Nice.
Yay,
Nice.
thank you for sharing,
Nice.
Tatum. You had more
Yeah.
courage than me.
Okay, awesome, Tatum. How did that feel to you when you said that to the two of us? What was the experience?
I think first thing I noticed, like you said, like it does feel like the way I write more than the way that I talk. So I would
Hmm.
definitely want to workshop making it feel a little more conversational.
Hmm.
I was really intentional about trying to frame it with my goals in mind because, Eloise, I have seen some of your discussions before, so I know a little bit about kind of framing it in that sense, which I think really helped me at the end and towards the beginning, framing kind of my higher level aspirations. It did give me a little bit more confidence than just like, I'm Tatum and I'm an engineer kind of thing.
Yes.
So that felt
Nice.
good.
Good. Yes. And the clarity with which you had each section was really, really powerful for me, right? Uh, there was those clear ideas that came forth. I understood more about you than if you had just said, I'm an engineer, which would have given me basically no information about you
Hmm.
except for a very high level tag, right,
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
engineer. So really, really nice. I agree with you. The flow, right? I felt like you were saying sentences to me that made sense in order, and like the story itself I followed, but I didn't feel like you were talking to me,
Hmm.
right? So let's take it again, and I'm very tempted to ask you to put your notes away and just tell me, actually, before we dive in. You can keep your notes up, that's fine. I don't want to be too extreme with you. What are the if you were to say the key takeaway from each of these bullet points or sentences, what is the key takeaway for each? Just like we're candidly, talk to me. We're not presenting right now.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first bullet point was kind of around like helping pharma companies get therapies to patients faster. So
Love
that's a
it.
big one for me is just
Yep.
making sure that patients get the medicines that they need, and I like to help enable that. The second one was kind of building some credibility. So I've been an engineer before. I've done what your teams are doing right now. I know their aches and pains, basically.
Hmm.
The third one is more framing like how what my outcome kind of level goals and my prior experience feed into each other. So and how they have kind of pivoted with my current role. So where I sit now is I do a little bit of technology, and I also am more on the business side now. So I'm focused on what these pharma companies care about in terms of outcomes in that sense.
Hmm.
And then the last piece was more like, what are my goals? So I really love helping teams work more efficiently, work together, collaborate better, both where I work now and with the companies that I work with. So kind of setting the stage for I like to work with teams. I'd love to be a people leader one day.
Nice, nice. Okay, great. With that, who are you speaking to in this fictitious environment here? Are you talking to a leader within your organization? Are you talking to somebody in your network? Can we just choose that person right now?
Yeah, let's say I'm working with like a leader or a senior leader of some sort in one of the companies that I work with.
Okay, perfect. Nice. So you want to start a conversation with that person, right? And I'm like, and I'm that person. I wear that hat now, right? I'm leader. I'm like, Tatum, and I want you to put your notes away. Can you get those notes out of the way? You know it. You just told me your bullet points. You totally got this. Just talk to me. And like you're gonna hate it and it's gonna be perfect. Okay. So Tatum, I am that leader. And let's say I'm meeting you kind of for the first time, or maybe you're working on a project that I lead. Let's say, t- wait, can you tell me a little bit about you?
Yeah, Eloise, I'm Tatum, and I work right now with helping big pharma companies make sure that they're getting therapies to patients as fast as they can. I actually come from industry, so I've worked as an engineer. I've dealt with, the deviations and trying to wrangle all of the data and all of that the terrible parts of being an engineer, the parts that make the fun parts less fun. And really what I love doing is just making sure that pharma companies don't have to get bogged down in all of these struggles, so they're able to, reduce their risk and make sure that their product is of great quality so that patients' lives keep getting better. And my favorite part of what I do is getting to work with teams. I love working with the teams within my organization, but also the teams within organizations like yours, just to make sure that, they're working as effectively as they can and that we're getting the outcomes that we need.
How was
So
that?
good.
How was
That felt
that?
much
Yeah.
better.
Okay, what felt better about it? Tell us.
I felt like I wasn't like reading through bullets, first of all. So I felt more confident just like thinking about how I would approach a conversation, like you said. Like, I want to talk to you and I want to tell you about me, but in a way that is speaking to the things I know you're interested in. So I know you're interested
Yes.
in how our teams are going to work together and how I'm going to get you the outcomes that you need and why you would trust me with those. And so I think it made it easier to kind of think of it that way.
100%. Yeah. It was conversational. I heard those little filler words, and so I, or what that looks like. I can't remember exactly what you said, but you use those little words that we use when we speak that
Mm-hmm.
connected one thought to the next. You still were incredibly clear in those ideas that you shared, but you used different words this time, and it
Mm-hmm.
felt very much like Tatum speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it did really feel like you were talking to me, right? And this ties back to the practice the experience, not just the speech, right?
Yeah.
It's who am I talking to and how am I going to speak to that person? And it was
Mm-hmm.
incredibly successful. I loved that. That right, Rupesh? Wasn't it wonderful?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
loved it.
And it's so much less stressful too. Like I'm not memorizing these 100 words that I need to say. I just know like I'd like you to get these 3 to 4 things from this conversation and I can
Hmm.
pivot and adjust depending on how the conversation's going.
Exactly. And one thing that I really want to note here too is I didn't tell you to slow down. I didn't tell you to pause. I didn't tell you
Mm-hmm.
to make eye contact. I didn't tell you to do any of those delivery pieces, but purely because you were in a conversation with
Mm-hmm.
me, the leader, all those things naturally started to happen.
Mm-hmm.
There was a shift that happened between the kind of like more robotic reading
Mm-hmm.
feel that I heard the first time and this like natural, easy to hear and understand and connect with tone that you were using and pacing that you were using that just naturally fell into place. We all know how to have conversations, right? And so many people often say, Eloise, I've struggled with making eye contact in these moments. It's so awkward. But I'm like, you're looking at me right now. We're just talking to each other, right? So it's not necessarily about learning those skills or making it better or like speaking like a leader. Oftentimes it's just leaning into or leaning on what we are already good at, like having a conversation that can
Mm-hmm.
really unlock real connection between people, which is awesome. We saw that happen.
Great job. Thank you, Tatum, for being vulnerable and letting us workshop that. But I love that we have the pre recording and the post recording because you can look that. I'll send that to you
Mm-hmm.
and you can take from that and just see the instant improvement within 30 seconds. So thank you so much, Eloise. And you
Yeah.
brought up in that last part, and I'm sure this comes up a lot, speaking like a leader or the term executive presence. And I think a
Mm.
lot of, and as you said, that some of this is just a natural, like, you're just talking to me. But before we get into our rapid fire questions, I was curious, can you talk a little bit more about executive presence or speaking like a leader? What does that mean to you? And how do you coach folks who want to improve in that area of executive presence?
Yeah, for sure. When I think about executive presence, and I'm asked this question a lot, there are three words that come to mind. One is, are you credible? So are you knowledgeable? Do you have the experience? Do I feel like you've done this before? Like if I ask you a question, will you have the answer? Right? Are you credible as a leader, as a person in my life? Uh, are you relatable? Are you easy to talk to? Do I feel like you actually listen to me? Are you present when I'm talking to you? Uh, are you in conversation with your teams? And then reliable. Do you have consistency? Do you show up with consistency? Are you reliable when you say you're going to do something? Are you going to do it? All of these things together really are part of what executive presence is, right? So there's the knowledge piece, the credibility. That I don't really work on with my clients because that takes experience, time, expertise, curiosity. I mean, I'm happy to talk about being curious, but that's not necessarily what I do. I work more on the other pieces. Are you relatable? Are you actually truly listening to the people around you? Are you communicating with clarity? Are you building the right relationships? Are you present with your teams, right? And then the consistency piece, the reliable piece. Are you showing up with your team in a way that actually builds that trust and gives them the confidence in you as you show up as a leader day in and day out? Uh, So I think that those are three interesting words to keep in mind, right? Am I credible? Am I relatable? Am I reliable? Those are some key things. And the way that I work on that with my clients really is, first of all, being a mirror to the person in front of me and making sure that they're aware of how they fit into that trio for the people around them. And then working on skill sets around communication, around presence, around the situations that they are in and how they reacting and acting in those moments, to really give them the awareness of how they are coming off to the people around them, and then building the small skill sets. And that can be tools, approaches, structures, mindset shifts that help them really refine often very, very small things that have a really big impact in how they feel as a leader, and also come off to others.
Thank you. I love that. Very concise, but also practical definition, like things you can work on.
Yeah.
Before we get into our rapid fire, Tatum, anything else for Eloise?
No, I have some homework for myself to go practice, maybe with different people in different scenarios, and try to. My big takeaway was I'm excited to try to push myself to use it even when I'm uncomfortable doing so, when other people are just relying on the, hey, I'm an engineer. I want to push myself to actually do my proper elevator pitch. So that was awesome. Thank you, Eloise.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love that. Yeah.
Thanks, Tatum. All right, let's shift into the rapid fire, Eloise. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So, what's something you've read, watched, or listened to that's inspired you recently?
So many things. The first thing that comes to mind is there's a podcast called Hidden Brain, which maybe you're familiar with. Shankar Vedantam is the host, and he has a podcast that came out recently called The Secret of Charisma. And I loved listening to it, not only for the topic, which I find fascinating. A lot of people ask me, how can I build, but I'm not charismatic, for example, right? So highly recommend listening to that. And he's also such a poised, confident, clear, calm communicator, such an inspiration as far as public speaking.
Oh, that's great. I've heard of the podcast, but I'll listen to that the next time I walk my dog.
Highly recommend.
We are a public speaking podcast, so what's one thing you wish speakers would stop doing?
Something that's so simple is if you're on stage, you're standing, is shifting their feet or walking for no reason. That drives me crazy, because it makes you look uncomfortable. And in fact, learning to ground your feet grounds you, and moving on stage should only be, in my opinion, to walk towards a part of the audience, to say something to them. I call it purposeful movement. When there is unpurposeful movement, it's not helpful to anyone at all.
Yes, I remember the first time I gave a speech, and it was very early in my career, and it was in a hotel ballroom. There were like 500 people. I was like 23. And I was running. I was like out of breath because I was running, like pacing from side to side because I was so nervous.
Yep. And how can you actually channel that energy into connecting with your audience instead, right? If not, we're staying in our own feedback loop, kind of going back and forth because we're nervous, rather than actually using that momentum to engage with the people in front of you. Totally. Yeah. I see it all the time.
Yes. Okay. What's your go-to way to collaborate? Do you like email, in person, Teams, Zoom, Slack?
I'm a talker. I'm a listener. I much prefer speaking. I even speak through my thoughts as well. So much more of a speaker than a writer. Yeah, give me a call. I much prefer talking.
Tatum and I have recently discovered voice notes on Message.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was initially very shy to use, but now I'm like sending voice notes all the time.
It's
Game
so much
changer.
better. You don't have to assume what their inflection is. It's just so natural. Yeah, I'm with you, Eloise.
Totally. Yeah.
Voice notes. Yes. I support. What was your last major public speaking gig and what did you learn from it?
I recently married some friends. And when I did that, I was in front of all the most important people in their lives. And it was a very meaningful speech. And I think what it taught me is, and I knew this already, but it really put it front and center, that When we speak, it's for the people that are listening to you. It's for your audience. It's not for us. And that an emotional journey that you can bring someone on or an audience through is much more powerful than the information that we might share along the way.
I love that. And I think that's such a good mindset shift too if you're nervous. We're currently, when we're recording this, it's Toastmaster contest season, and I'm coaching and helping a few people. And just remembering it's about sharing your story. It's not about the votes at the end or who wins. It's about impacting the audience and
Yes.
getting away from all the thoughts in your head. So I love that.
Moving
It's about
them.
the audience, not
Exactly.
you.
It's nice because it takes the ego out of it too. It's like you said, like framing it all as being generous. I think that's
Yes.
a part of it, which is nice.
All right. What is one piece of advice you'd give to a new public speaker?
One of the first things that really stuck with me as a public speaker is I had a public speaking coach who, when I was very young, who said to me, Eloise, there is an unspoken agreement between a speaker and an audience. And that unspoken agreement is that when you are standing, you're in charge. And if you don't fully assume that responsibility, you let your audience down. And what I find really awesome about that is that all you need to do is stand up in order to get their attention. And they will, if you then tell them to stand up or raise their hand or stick out their tongue, they will do it, right? Because you are in charge. And that is just a natural boost of confidence that it should give you, right? And a responsibility, right, of actually doing the thing and leading them through an experience, right? But you don't have to earn that. It's an unspoken agreement that happens immediately as soon as you stand up in front of an audience. They assume that you're in charge and they will give you that responsibility.
Oh, that's so good. So deep. Thank you so much. So, Eloise, if people want to connect with you, learn more about your journey, or reach out to you for coaching services, how can they get in touch?
The best way with me is to go to my website. It's eloquencecoaching.com, or to find me on LinkedIn under my name, Eloïse Eonnet.
Thank you. And we will put that in the show notes, so the links will all be there for folks to access. I really appreciate your time. Tatum, thank you for coming prepared, being vulnerable, letting us all witness the glory of that transformation that your elevator pitch had. So thank you so much. And Eloise, thank you. This was so fun. Tatum and I have been talking about this probably for 2 years now. And I didn't want to reach out till I had my editing team in place and my PR team and the website. And now Speak Arizona is still a work in progress, but we are moving, and I love my team. So shout out to Marie and Vincent and Matt, who all make me look really good, and they're just behind the scenes. So
Yeah, well, it's my absolute pleasure to be here. It's so fun talking to the two of you, and thanks to the rest of the team as well, who we don't see but that are so important. Yeah, thrilled to be here and to be in conversation with you. Thank you.
thank you. And thank you, subscribers, for tuning in. If you want to hear more, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, we encourage you to speak Arizona.